Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to ICTM 2022 Day 2 afternoon session. I'm your MC. I am Seoul. It's a great honor to walk you through today's conference. In this session, we are providing Korean and English simultaneous interpretation service. For those of you joining us offline, you can use the receivers before you. Korean is channel 1 and English channel 2. For our Zoom participants, you can also access the interpretation service. You can click the simultaneous interpretation button at the bottom of the screen and select the language of your choice. Now, I'd like to briefly introduce to you our honored guests for this session. If their names are called, please welcome them with a big hand. First of all, we have from Kyung University Korean Medicine Hospital, Dr. Heejae Jeong. From Sangji University, we have Professor Sujin Lee. Also from Sangji University School of Korean Medicine, we have Professor Youngju Kim. From Korea Institute of Oriental Medicine, we have Principal Researcher Sun-Oh Kwon. We have many other participants, but because of time constraint, it's unfortunate and regrettable. I cannot introduce each and every one of them. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite our keynote speaker for this session. The keynote speaker is Professor Heejae Jeong from Kyung University Korean Medicine Hospital. The topic is Korean medicine treatment guidelines for infectious diseases. Please help me welcome our speaker. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As you can see, the topic of my presentation is current status of research on infectious diseases of Korean medicine. I am, as was introduced, Director Heejae Jeong from Hospital Korean Medicine Hospital of Kyung University. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our hosts and the organizer for giving me this wonderful opportunity. So instead of delivering my presentation in English, I will use my mother tongue, Korean. So I'd like to kindly ask for your understanding, especially those of you joining us from overseas. So again, the topic is current status of research on infectious diseases of Korean medicine. The reason why we have selected this topic is starting from 2019, COVID-19 hit countries around the world, and we still suffer from many challenges because of this. And when providing patient care, we in the healthcare sector try to come up with some solutions. Now we have two different branches of medicine. We have Korean and Western medicine, and we thought that in the Korean medicine that we should also come up with our own methodologies to treat infectious diseases. So we believe that there should be some policy frameworks to support the use of Korean medicine for infectious diseases. We actually had many research projects to that end, and based on our research and the analysis thereon, we thought about whether or not the Korean medicine is efficacious in treating infectious diseases. Now, if you allow me, I'd like to remove my facial masks during my presentation. So this is my table of content. Here I have prepared 4 different topics. Number 1, Korea, China, COVID-19 responses. Number 2, with regard to number 1, I would like to share with you how the responses of these two countries differed. And number 2, I'm going to share with you Korean Medicine Telephone Medical Center. We did have rather a small achievement in this area, so I'm going to share that with you. And as I mentioned earlier, policy-wise, we believe that the Korean medicine can be of help in treating infectious diseases. So in order to propose that to the government, we have conducted some research, and I'm going to share with you that the result of that here today. And number 4, future challenges going forward. As you can see from the slide, with regard to COVID-19, since its outbreak, Korea and China actually introduced similar responses at the government level. In Korea, when the pandemic first hit, the government introduced a crisis alert of caution level, and then it was later enhanced to alert level. At that point in time, I believe that the government policy was to limit the spread of COVID-19 as much as possible. But in February 2020, in Daegu, the pandemic crisis alert was enhanced to severe level. So from medical centers, national health insurance and budget and losses, government provided a lot of subsidies and compensations, and social distancing and also stronger quarantine measures were introduced. China is no different. In Wuhan, the outbreak first occurred, and it was designated as a level 2 statutory epidemic. And also, China introduced COVID-19 prevention and control guidelines. Now, there are, however, some differences between the two countries, especially in terms of traditional medicine. When it comes to the use of Korean medicine and Chinese medicine, there were some stark differences. In China, the Chinese medicine and utilizing infectious disease treatment methods, policy and institutional-wise, Chinese medicines were used to fight COVID-19. However, we didn't have such policy frameworks to utilize the Korean medicine. And so instead of at the government level, different Korean medicine societies came together in order to promote the use of Korean medicine to battle COVID-19. So in China, they've introduced the use of Chinese medicine in their government guidelines, and the Cheongpe Pedok decoction was even recommended by the government of China to use for COVID-19 patients. And also with regard to prevention and treatment, different guidelines were introduced at the government level. But different from China, in Korea, when COVID-19 broke out, the Korean medical doctors came together in order to put together a task force team. And against the Ministry, together with the Ministry of Health and Welfare, and also in partnership with the Parliament, we tried to promote the use of the Korean medicine. However, because of the Medical Act and many restrictions in place, we've only made it to provide recommendations to Korean medical doctors to fight COVID-19. And we also, as I explained before, set up Korean Medicine Telephone Medical Center so that we can also play a role in treating COVID-19. So all these efforts were spearheaded by Korean medical doctors, especially the efforts were concentrated in Daegu and Seoul. The Korean Medicine Telephone Medical Center actually was quite useful. So as you can see from here, this is the Telephone Medical Center. Here we have a lot of Korean medical doctors. They joined the Telephone Medical Center after going through training. And not just for the Korean patients, they also provided guidance to patients in the US. And this also led the way to set up telephone medical centers in the US. Here you can see the process of Korean medical medicine to a telephone medical center. So if there is an infection, then normally there will be 3 different tracks. Patients who would self-isolate and patients who would enter health centers, and finally patients who were hospitalized. Now, first 2 could access Korean medicine, and once they in their recovery stage, they were also able to receive Korean medicine recovery treatments. However, during isolation, the hospitalized patients did not have access to the Korean medicine, but after they left the hospital, and they were in the process of recovery, they had the access of Korean medicine. As you can see from here, we had an advisory board, and they would provide necessary recommendations, and we would do follow up on the patients so that we can provide relevant treatments. Now, in the beginning of COVID-19, what sort of contribution did the Korean medicine make? As you can see from here, there were many infections in the beginning, and the telephone medical center only took up 3.5% or 6% and 9.6%. However, over time, you can see that a lot of COVID-19 patients actually relied on Korean medicine to fight COVID-19. So if we had the institutional or policy support, then I think that more patients would have utilized Korean medicine. Now, we did not simply look at the figures. We actually put together a lot of data, and we did retrospective analysis as well. Here you can see telemedicine and the use of Korean medicine for patients with COVID-19 in South Korea observational study. This is the topic of the paper that we've published. Inside the paper, you can see how the symptoms were before and after treatment, and also the satisfaction level of the patients after receiving Korean medicine. Now, this shows the changes in symptoms before and after telephone consultations. And of course, there are many symptoms, but here we've tried headache, chills, sputum, and dry cough. And you can see that severe, moderate, mild level or stage, there is a statistically meaningful difference in the symptoms before and after telephone consultations. And although it is not included in the slide, the satisfaction level of the patients was quite high compared to the patients who've only received conventional medicine. Those who had access to telephone Korean medicine consultation had greater satisfaction level. And when it comes to CPG, we've used in the initial phase a lot of 청패패독 decoction. And in the recovery phase, we've used and prescribed 청패패독 decoction number 2 for non-symptomatic patients, and also patients with mild symptoms, and also patients in the recovery phase. We've used Kyung pill. So based on that, we can see that Korean medicine does and can play a significant role in fighting infectious diseases. So based on that, we've came to an understanding that we also need to include Korean medicine to treat infectious diseases as part of government policy. So for that, we've embarked on a project called Research and Countermeasures for Infectious Diseases of Korean Medicine. So that based on this data, we can make policy proposals to the Korean government, and going forward, we can institutionally include Korean medicine to treat infectious diseases. So currently, the project is ongoing, and the funding is coming from National Institute of Korean Medicine Development. And inside the project, there are 4 different research topics. Research topic number 1 is shown here. So unlike Korea, in China, institutionally and policy-wise, the government included the Chinese medicine to treat and cure infectious diseases. So benchmarking those cases, we've tried to come up with different proposals to the Korean government to include Korean medicine. So we conducted a lot of research of other countries and gathered those data in this research. So having a standardized diagnosis, treatment, and treatment is very important to be used as an institutional modality. So we are going to put together a database so that can be loaded onto the platform going forward. We are progressing really well with this research, and I believe that interim research result is going to be shared pretty soon. Second is another important research topic. Now, if you look at papers being published in China, you can see that in fighting COVID-19, Chinese medicine can be very effective. And when it comes to symptom relief and prevention, you can also see that Korean or Chinese medicine can be quite useful. So I've talked about the telephone medical center, but starting from December 2021 to April 2022, we've introduced ECRF. So ECRF-based patient basic information were collected, and there are also symptoms and prescriptions data were collected. And based on such preparations, we were able to gather altogether 8,423 patient case data. We have collected patient consent and also got the approval from IRB, and we are currently analyzing the data. Like research topic number 1, we believe that this research topic number 2 is going to help us realize the efficacy of Korean medicine in fighting infectious diseases. So this data is going to be quite useful going forward. And again, with regard to this very topic, I believe that Professor Lee Soo-jin is going to make a presentation. Now, research topic number 3. As we progressed forward, we realized that we need charts that we can use together. There can be many more infectious diseases going forward, and CRF can also would have to be flexible enough so that they can be relevant to other infectious diseases. So with regard to not just COVID-19, but for other types of infectious diseases, we decided to develop a CRF or case record form for Korean medicine, so that based on which we can develop CPG and CPA. And those can also be loaded onto the platform that we're going to build in the future. And we can also load it onto the CDS, or Clinical Decision Support System, so that it can be utilized and leveraged by many Korean medical doctors for clinical purposes and also for research purposes, we are developing two different types of CDSs so that in whichever case it may be, they can be made for use. So as you can see from here, this is eCRF based platform development that is currently being designed. It's still actually it's ongoing at the moment. And so data that were generated from research topic 1 and 2 are going to be added to this platform. And I believe that the eCRF developed based on such data is going to be very relevant. Finally, the Korean medicine, when it comes to infectious diseases, also needs to be able to be included within the institutional framework so that they can be made use when another infectious disease hits us. So as a mid to long-term project, we plan to establish plans, and we are also trying to design a system so that we can have a master plan or measure to respond to infectious diseases and employ rapid response in case of an infectious disease. So when the level of infectious disease is raised from caution to alert and serious, there are different measures that we can employ. When we are at the caution stage, we would have to have a task force team set up. Then we would have to have a knowledge sharing platform between the Korean medicine with the government, and establish evidence for the treatment of Korean medicine related to infectious diseases, and also identify the status of domestic and foreign herbal medicine licensing and development. Now, if we enter the severe stage, then we will have to maintain a cooperation system with related agencies such as the Ministry of Health and Welfare and the Ministry of Food and Drug. And we would have to have Korean medicine seconded to those government agencies so that we can maintain a tight partnership to respond to severe infectious diseases. Now, future challenges are introduced on this slide. Now, number one, I'm sure that you would all agree, but we have two very different tracks of medicine, Western and Korean medicine. And there is definitely a conflict between Western and Korean doctors with regard to treatment modalities. And because of that, I believe that we need to promote research between the two so that we can build confidence. And based on information and knowledge, I think that we can clear misunderstandings and conflicts. And also what is needed is the establishment of the legal and institutional basis for the treatment of infectious diseases with the Korean medicine. And third, I think that treatments under the Korean medicine can be very different from Western medicine. And so I think that different approaches and their efficacies and effectiveness needs to be proven so that it can be well understood by the general public. Yes, of course, there should be no more infectious diseases going forward. However, if and when another infectious disease hits us, I think that we need to have Korean medicine included as part of an institutional treatment modality so that we can better cure patients. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was Director Heejae Jeong from Kyung National University Korean Medicine Hospital. Thank you very much.
Following that, we will now have the session on the infectious disease control. And for this session, the experts from Korea, China, and Hong Kong are brought together to share their experiences on how the traditional medicine has been utilized and made a contribution to the control of infectious disease, including COVID-19. And as for the first speaker of this session, we would like to invite the Bien Zhaojiang, Vice Chancellor of the Hong Kong Baptist University. And he will be talking about the effectiveness of Chinese herbal medicine in patients with COVID-19 during Omicron wave in Hong Kong, a retrospective cohort study from a telemedicine center. Let us watch the pre-recorded video.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Chairman, for your introduction, and also thanks for the invitation from organization committee to let me have the chance to share our researches about the effectiveness of Chinese herbal medicine in patients with COVID-19 during the Omicron wave in Hong Kong, which is a retrospective cohort study from the Telemedicine Center. I'm Zex from Hong Kong Baptist University. This study, we are talking about the four aspects about the background methodology results and conclusions. We all know that Hong Kong experienced the fifth wave of pandemic, dominated by infection with Omicron BA.2.2 variant of the COVID-19 in the early 2022. There are around 748,091 reported infection cases and 4,350 cases in Hong Kong start from the December of the 2021 up to the March of this year. You can find the peak time is around the February and in the March. This is peak time of the fifth wave of the COVID-19 in Hong Kong. The healthcare system in Hong Kong was overwhelmed during the fifth waves of the COVID-19. At that time, Hong Kong Baptist University, we quickly set up a telemedicine system, which is focused on Chinese medicine centers on the February 18, 2022. We have this the telemedicine center to support those patients quarantined at home or in the hotel, but they cannot go to the hospital to get the consultation from the doctors. Today, I introduce about our retrospective clinical studies about COVID-19. The data is from our Tele-Chinese Medicine Centers database. The patient with a PCR or rapid test for the COVID-19 was registered for Chinese medicine consultation and treatment. We know the TCM, which means traditional Chinese medicine. But in these specific wave times, they have the new meaning for the tele-Chinese medicines. We have two studies. One is about to analyze the symptom profile of the COVID-19 patients at different weeks of illness after positive confirmation. Until now, they still don't have some public literature to show how long those of the COVID-19 patients, the symptom can last for the weekdays. The second study, we want to analyze the Chinese herbal medicine effects for the COVID-19 patients. The study is based on the data from the telemedicine center. That means the patients was confirmed as a positive, but they cannot go to the hospital because the hospital is too overwhelmed. Some of the serious cases have the chance to go to the hospital, but some of the cases, if they're not very serious, they will stay at home and the quarantine stages. One Chinese medicine cohort, we have first and second consultation and taking the Chinese medicine, within 10 days after first positive, which is when part of the data we do the analysis. We have the comparison group, which is no Chinese medicine treatment within the 10 days of the first positive test and receive the consultation at day 7. That's because some of the patients registered in our systems, they have been confirmed as a COVID positive, but when they registered, they have been negative. So that's we put in the comparison groups. The outcome assessment, we use COVID-19 symptom scores, symptom severity, and negative conversion times. That's a major outcome assessment. For the COVID-19 symptoms, we selected 15 very common COVID patients' symptoms as a base to calculate those of the symptom profiles. For working through the tele-Chinese medicine system in our HKBU Tele-Chinese Medicine Center, the patients normally will be confirmed under isolation, which is quarantine stages. They get the news from the television, from the website, and then they register into our systems. And then we give a confirm about the appointment in our telemedicine system center. And then through the system, we provide online consultation using Baptist University telemedicine systems. Of course, normally lots of the question about normally we say the Chinese medicine practice also have the full diagnosis, including the touch the pulse. But in the tele systems, touching the pulse becomes impossible. But we do have some of the other ways to ask more questions about the patient's background, patient symptoms, which to compensate that one. We know that this is not ideal stages, but we think that can help the patient in a certain degrees. And then we have the prescriptions and for the patients and deliver to the patients. For the consultation, for the herbs, and also delivery, which was in the free basis, which was supported by a donation from 10 cents companies. During the treatment, we built up systems to specifically for COVID-19 patients. And for the clinical practice, we developed the clinical practice guidelines specifically for the COVID-19, which is based on the supervision from China, mainland China, and also local expertise in Hong Kong. Majorly, we have the 3 formulas based on Hong Kong's symptoms. We give it more, majority is in granules. We have specific Chinese medicine COVID-19 systems, which is based on Chinese syndrome differentiations. Sorry, this is in Chinese version. We have simplified Chinese, and also we have the traditional Chinese versions. We still don't have the English versions. And our chief executive visited our centers in March 12th. Encourage us to help more patients. Between the March 14 to the May 6, we have around 18,692 consultation records in our systems with 12,950 patients, the total number. In fact, during the 5th wave, we see around 42,000 patients. We can find that this is symptom profile of the studies. We calculate around 12,950 COVID patients, and including around 12,000 with symptoms, about 940 patients without significant symptoms. As for the study 2 about the Chinese medicine effectiveness for the COVID-19, we screened the patients between day 1, they were confirmed positive, and day they have the day 10, they're really taking the Chinese medicine. And also, they have the chance to finish the second of the consultations. Based on that criteria, we screened from around 12,000 of the patients. We found the Chinese medicine cohort around 400, and the no Chinese medicine cohort around 371. We do the effective analysis. The baseline of those characteristics of the patient in the first study, we can find that there are around the different kinds of characteristics, and based on the 15 typical COVID-19 symptoms, we found that 68% of patients was female, the median age is middle age, and 62.3 patients have received 4 or boost vaccination. Median days of the turning 8 of the negative is about 8. Around 71% of the patients were still reporting symptoms at week 4. That means based on current idea, which is have suffer from the long COVID issues. Those of the symptom profile at the different weeks after COVID-19 diagnosis, we based on the 12,000 of the patients. This is unpublished data. We have submitted the paper to the Journal of Medical Virologists. You can find that 5 common symptoms, which is on the period stages, including cough, spectrum, dry throat, itchy throat, and the fatigue. And sore throat, diarrhea, and headaches was the most common during the first weeks of the illness. The prevalence of all symptoms except fatigue decreased significantly in the afterwards. Within 4 weeks versus the symptom presents at different weeks, we found the patients who had been infected for 4 weeks or more was much more likely to have the fatigue, which is most common symptom. This is in line with the report from the published paper that the fatigue is one of the significant of the clinical symptoms in the long COVID patients. We use a progression a model that adjusts the effect from other factors. We can find age, gender, vaccination status, and comorbidities. And also we found that the COVID-19 symptom score, which is reflect the severity of the symptoms, are negatively correlated with the days from infection to the TCM consultations, with ages and also vaccination dose, and also have the hypertension histories. Most importantly, we can find that those of the big relationship between those of the vaccine dose, infection to consultations, especially those of, but you can find that those of the patient's history, the symptoms did not have significant correlation with lung cancer or other cancers, with those of the asthma or COPD, which is respiratory disease. The situation is something different from the published data that the respiratory disease history always have some of the higher correlation with COVID-19 symptoms. That probably we analyze that because those of the patients, we focus on those of the quarantine patients. If we see that those of the serious case, maybe they have gone to the hospital and hospitalized the situation. So if we want to get the full pictures, probably we need to involving more data, not just involving those of the quarantine stages, and still need to involving the patients in the hospital. And another one we are about the negative conversion time and the related factors. We found that the negatively, negative correlation conversion times is negatively correlated with the vaccination dose. and also positively related with age, days from infection to T7 consultation, history of diabetes, and lung cancers. And for the study 2, which we have the comparison about the patients who taking Chinese medicine, and also they come back to have a second consultation, that's so we can assess the symptom changes. We can find that the symptoms score at the first consultation, which is around 4 point, which is, but at the second consultation is around the half. So we can find that from the first to the second consultation, the TCM treatment has a significant effects. Secondly, we have found the severity of the 15 COVID-19 symptoms recorded at the second consultation. They are all improved significantly when comparison to the first consultations. Those are the symptoms, as I mentioned before, which is the 15 common symptoms, including fever, chills, cough, sputum, dry throat, itchy throat, sore throat, headaches, chest tightness, abdominal distension, abdominal pain, nausea, diarrhea, those are the symptoms. Compare with no Chinese medicine cohort, the Chinese medicine treatment significantly improved the COVID symptom score for cough, spectrum, dry throat, itchy throat, chest tightness, abdominal pain, and also for the fatigues. As for the negative conversion time, which we define as from the first day of positive to the first day of negative, we can find that the Chinese medicine cohort was significantly shortened than the no Chinese medicine cohort. That means if they're treating with the Chinese medicine, the NCT is a 6.98 days. But if no Chinese medicine treatment, it's around 8.15 days. And the shortest one is 4 days. You can find that Chinese medicine can significantly shorten the negative conversion times. So based on those of the study, we can find that for those of the clinical symptoms, for especially for the week 4, they still have some around 17% of the patients suffer from the clinical symptom. And the fatigue is a key symptom in chronic stages. And Chinese medicine can be effective during the pandemic for improving the clinical symptom, shortening the negative conversion time. The sooner patients being taking Chinese medicine, the better the effectiveness. From this study, we also found that the telemedicine online consultation systems with a standard data entry format is good for patients, for doctors, and for researchers. Of course, during this study, we found that new technology could be developed during the study to facilitate the telemedicine systems. We believe in that the COVID-19 in Hong Kong opened a door for the tele-Chinese medicines and also facilitate a process during the pandemic to help to support the patients. We believe in the future, this tele-Chinese medicine requires a TCM, not just the traditional Chinese medicine. Tele-Chinese medicine system in the future healthcare system could play a very important role. And also we believe in during the process, if we have some new technology combined with that one, this make sure to facilitate the doctor collect all the data from the patient. That will help the patients and also help the reforming of the healthcare system, not just in Hong Kong. I think that could be applied in other countries, also in other healthcare systems, including telemedicine systems. We want to take this chance to thanks for the Vincent and Lily Wu's Foundation support, and also to thanks for the Hong Kong government, mainland China's central government, their support during the pandemic in these years for Hong Kong and also for the Chinese medicine development. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to listen to my talk. This is the end of my talk. I wish that the traditional medicine, traditional Chinese medicine can help, not just for COVID, can help our health in not just in Hong Kong, not just in our China, and because it can benefit all the patients in the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those of you with questions, now if you are joining us via Zoom, you can post your questions in the chat window. So please upload your questions there and we will relay those to the speaker. Next, we would like to invite over Professor Shin Takayama from Japan. He's going to share with us the topic of clinical trials of campo medicines for the treatment of COVID-19. We have a pre-recorded video of his presentation. Please direct your attention to the screen.
Hello everyone. I'm Dr. Shin Takayama at Tohoku University Hospital and a director of the Japan Society for Oriental Medicine COVID-19 clinical trial projects. Thank you for inviting me for this session. It's my honor to have an opportunity of presentation. The contents of this presentation are shown. Today, I introduce two clinical trials by the Japan Society for Oriental Medicine. The trial name is Integrative Management in Japan for Epidemic Disease, IMJEDI study. This is my conflict of interest. First, I introduce conventional and campo medicine treatment for a mild to moderate COVID-19, a multi-center retrospective observational study. Campo medicines has been widely used in Japan for Spanish flu pandemic caused by H1N1 influenza subtype virus from 1918 to 1920. Campo medicine is now used to treat common cold symptom, bronchitis, and pneumonia under the National Health Insurance System in Japan. We have previously reported that some campo medicines, which are used for infections, have symptom relieving and antiviral, anti-inflammatory, immunomodulatory, and antioxidant activities, and may contribute to alleviating the symptoms and suppressing the worsening of COVID-19. This study aimed to survey the actual treatment for a patient with mild to moderate COVID-19 in Japan and investigate the clinical course, safety, and disease progression after treatment with conventional and campo medicines. Patient recruitment were performed from January 2020 to October 2021 in collaboration with 23 medical facilities in Japan. The inclusion criteria was set at confirmed or suspected mild to moderate stage 1 COVID-19 and symptomatic over 20 years old. And here, mild stage means symptomatic and moderate 1 stage means symptomatic pneumonia without respiratory failure in Japan. Background data of the patients were registered from medical records. The main outcome was set at the number of days without fever or with a body temperature less than 37 degrees Celsius. The secondary outcome was set at the number of days without symptoms, such as cough, dyspnea, fatigue, and diarrhea. And event of disease progression, defined as a requirement for oxygen inhalation within 14 days of the first visit. The sample size was set at 1,000. Now let's see the result trial flowchart. A total of 960 patients were included. In total patient, 528 received Campo medicine. Campo medicine group, Campo medicine treatment with or without conventional treatment. And 434 patients received conventional treatment. Non-Campo group, conventional treatment without Campo medicine treatment. Among the confirmed 770 patients, 344 received Campo medicine, and 373 patients received conventional treatment only. The table shows the patient background. And overall, mean age was 48 years, and the patients in the Campo group were younger than those in the non-Campo group. The days from the onset was 5.8 days in overall. Comorbidities and lifestyle tells us significant differences between the groups in renal dysfunction and smokers. Symptoms at first visit are shown here. It tells us that in overall, 71% of cases had fever elevation, 55% had cough, 40% had fatigue, about 25% had headache, taste and smell disorder. The symptoms showed significant differences between the groups in fever and fatigue. Physical finding, blood test, and clinical stage are shown here. In overall, mean body temperature was 37.2 degrees Celsius, and half of cases were mild stage and moderate 1 stage in COVID-19. Significant differences between the groups were also observed in physical signs such as fever and pulse. The percentage of patients with pneumonia findings on X-ray imaging was significantly smaller in the Campo group than that in the non-Campo group. Moreover, COVID-19 staging was also different between the groups. Laboratory findings show that the level of lymphocyte count, C-reactive protein, and lactate hydrogenase were also significantly different. These results show differences in the background characteristics of the two groups. A total 66% of the patients received antipyretics and common cold medications. 16% received antibiotics, and 10% received favipiravir. The use of these medications were significantly different between the groups. The list of Campo medicines prescribed to the patient is shown here. The top 5 prescriptions were for 詳細固糖化気胸石膏、葛根糖、魔境間石糖、五苓散 and 五固糖。詳細固糖化気胸石膏 and 葛根糖 are frequently used in combination. Let's see the course of symptoms. The Kaplan-Meier survival curves of the days to relief from fever, which is the primary outcome, are shown. The median days without fever was 4.0 day in all cases as well as confirmed cases. Among total and confirmed cases, no significant differences in the days without fever after adjusted background factors. Secondary outcomes are shown here. Among total and confirmed cases, no significant differences in the days to relief from cough, dyspnea, fatigue, and diarrhea after adjusted background factors. Now let's see the disease progression. Among the confirmed COVID-19 patients, after adjusted for the COVID-19 staging at the first visit, the risk of disease progression was found to be lower in the Campo group than in the non-Campo group. In patients who started treatment within 4 days from the onset, the risk of disease progression was significantly lower in the Campo group than in the non-Campo group. And also after propensity score matching analysis and restricted to confirmed COVID-19 cases without steroid use, started treatment within 4 days from the onset, the risk of disease progression was significantly lower in the Campo group than in the non-Campo group. No adverse events related with the treatment for COVID-19 were reported. From January to August 2020, the number of PCR tests was insufficient to screen patients in Japan, and suspected COVID-19 cases were enrolled based on the physician judgment. In Japan, COVID-19 vaccination in elderly individuals started in April 2021 and was then gradually expanded to middle-aged to young adults. Most vaccinated patients were not included in this study. In summary, we demonstrated the clinical course of treatment with conventional and Campo medicine in patients with mild to moderate stage COVID-19. The results showed that no significant differences in the days of symptom relief, such as fever, cough, dyspnea, fatigue, and diarrhea, between the Campo group and non-Campo group after adjusted background factors. In COVID-19 patients without steroid use, treated within 4 days of disease onset, the risk of disease progression was significantly lower in the Campo group than in the non-Campo group. So, randomized control trial will warrant to further evaluate the benefit of Campo medicine against COVID-19. Let's move on to the next study. I would like to report a multi-center randomized control trial on the use of Campo medicine, 각건도 with 詳細孤島化気境石膏 in mild to moderate COVID-19 patients for symptomatic relief and prevention of severe stage. Many clinical trials were performed to show the efficacy and safety of drug repurposing, such as ritonavir, hydroxychloroquine, nahamostat methyl, azithromycin, steroid inhalation. The clear efficacy and safety for clinical use have never been shown. Some clinical efficacies of anti-SARS coronavirus monoclonal antibodies and ribonucleoside analogs have been shown in COVID-19 patients with mild to moderate diseases, but these clinical applications are of limited applicability in patients with risk factors. Oral administration drug to alleviate the symptoms and reduce disease progression of COVID-19 without risk factors could benefit patients and ease the burden on the healthcare system. SARS coronavirus 2 invaded to human epithelial cells via angiotensin-converting enzyme 2 receptor, supported by the type 2 transmembrane serine protease. After the capture in endosome, the virus is released to cytoplasm, then virus is processed by protease and replicated. The virus also causes cytokine storm while proliferating in severe cases. Therefore, the multifunctional drugs with the effect of antiviral and immunomodulation may contribute to symptom relief, suppressing disease progression and viral mutation resistance to SARS coronavirus 2. We focused on the traditional Japanese compound medicine, Kakkonto, which is used for the symptoms in acute viral infection, has proven antiviral effect for single-strand RNA virus via the inhibition of acidification of endosomes and pro-inflammatory cytokines modulation, such as IL-1, IL-6, and TNF-alpha. On the other hand, a compound medicine, Shōsai-koto-ga-kikyo-sekko, which is used for symptoms in subacute viral infection, has proven anti-inflammatory effect, lung tissue protective effect, and inflammatory cytokine modulation. The ingredient of Kakkonto and Shōsai-koto-ga-kikyo-sekko have shown to inhibit the combination of S protein to AS2 receptor template 2 and suppress protease activity. Thus, combination use of Kakkonto and Shōsai-koto-ga-kikyo-sekko can relieve the symptoms in COVID-19 with multifunctional antiviral and anti-inflammatory effects. This study aimed to test the efficacy and safety of compound medicines, Kakkonto with Shōsai-koto-ga-kikyo-sekko for symptom relief and suppressing disease progression in mild to moderate COVID-19 patients. The registration of the patient were performed in collaboration with 7 medical facilities from June 2020 to February 2022. The inclusion criteria are diagnosed as positive for SARS coronavirus 2, clinical stage of mild to moderate 1 stage, symptomatic, and over 20 years old. Patients were randomly assigned to the control group or compound medicine group. The control group received conventional treatment with antipyretics, painkillers, or antitussives for symptoms. The compound medicine group received 2.5 grams of Kakkonto and 2.5 grams of Shōsai-koto-ga-kikyo-sekko 3 times a day, orally for 14 days in addition to the conventional treatment. The primary outcome was set at the symptomatic relief of at least one of the symptoms: fever, cough, sputum, fatigue, and dyspnea. And the secondary outcomes were set to the complete resolution of each and every symptom, and also secondary outcomes set at the presence of severe disease with respiratory failure during the first 14 days from the treatment. Let's see the result flowchart of the trial. A total 161 patients were enrolled. Outcome was analyzed in 70 cases in the control group and 73 cases in the control group. The table shows characteristics of the patients. The gender, age, and risk factors matched closely in both groups. This table shows the symptom at first visit. Fever, cough, sputum, fatigue, and dyspnea matched closely in the both groups. Physical finding, blood test, and clinical stage are shown. Body temperature, blood sampling data, chest X-ray or CT findings, and COVID-19 staging matched closely in both groups. Let's see the result, symptomatic relief. The median number of days of the symptomatic relief was 3 days in control group and control group, without significant differences. And next, fever. The median number of days in the recovery of fever was 4 days in control group and 3 days in control group. Comparative risk analysis showed that control group significantly shortened the day of improvement of fever compared with control. Kaplan-Meier survival curves of days until recovery of cough, sputum, fatigue, and dyspnea are shown in this slide. There were no significant differences between the groups. Let's see the secondary outcome, progression to severe respiratory failure. In all cases, the number of patients that progressed to respiratory failure was 10 and 6 in the control and control groups. There was not significant differences between the groups. We focused additional assessment on only patients who were unvaccinated and in moderate stage 1 at baseline. In this subgroup, the number of patients who progressed to severe respiratory failure in control group was less than half that in the control group, which suggests that control treatment substantially decreased the risk of progression to severe disease. In safety assessment, no adverse events related with the treatment for COVID-19 were reported. In summary, control medicine group significantly shortened the days of fever compared with control group. Disease progression to respiratory failure in moderate 1-stage COVID-19 patients may be suppressed with these control medicines. In conclusion, control medicines, control with Shosaiko to Kikyoseko, are one of the treatment choices for fever relief in mild to moderate stage COVID-19 patients. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please leave your question at the Zoom screen and we'll collect the questions and give to the speaker. Following that, let's move on to the next presentation. Professor Lee Soo-jin of Sangju University will give us the presentation on the title of the retrospective analysis of the Korean medical treatment for COVID-19 patients using Telemedicine Center of Korean Medicine. Good afternoon. So I am the third speaker, and my name is Lee Soo-jin. Let me take off my facial mask before beginning my presentation. So here you see the contents of my presentation. My study is to use the is about the patient population that use the services from the telemedicine center of the Korea Medicine for COVID-19 patients. So I'll briefly introduce to you the telemedicine center. And then I'm going to talk about the retrospective chart review study that is currently going on. And then I'm going to touch upon our current survey and research on the COVID-19 sequelae and the level of satisfaction for the Korean medicine treatment. Then I'm going to conclude my presentation by talking about the future challenges. First of all, let me explain to you about the telemedicine center of the Korea Medicine for COVID-19 patient, which is run by the KIOM, the Korea Institute of the Oriental Medicine, and also the Association of the Korean Medicine. So it has run in the period of between December 23rd of the 2021 and the April 15th of the 2022. So the center has been up and running during this period, and it was run by the Association of the Korean Medicine. And the method was that we received the phone calls or the online applications. And once we receive these applications, then we refer these COVID patients to the Korean medicine clinics and institutes so that they can receive the telemedicine services. And here you see the number of participating Korean medicine institutions, total 531, and number of Korean medicine doctors participating. So total 1,118 doctors applied for the service, but they had to complete the training. So finally, 680 doctors participated. And also the number of patients stand at 8,423 in total. And this slide shows the leaflet and the promotional material of the telemedicine center. And on the right-hand side, you can see the banner that was used for the online promotion. Now let's take a look at the structure of the operating system. So once the patients are confirmed with the COVID-19, then they either make a phone call or make the online applications. Then the telemedicine center provide the guidance about the Korean medicine medical treatment to the patients and collect some basic information about the patients. And then they relay this information to the doctors of the Korean medicine, usually in the vicinity of the residence of the patient. And then the Korean medicine doctors contact the patients to provide the remote medical service, and patients will receive the Korean medicine treatment services. And in this process, if there are any requests or any questions from the patient or the doctors, then these questions and requests will be relayed to the telemedicine center for response. Now let's take a look at some treatment flow more in detail for this remote Korean medicine treatment. So once you are confirmed with the COVID-19, then they can make application, and the first examination will be conducted. And then additional examination take place during the 2 to 6 days of the home quarantine. And 2 weeks after the release from the quarantine, the follow-up consultation will be conducted. So let's say that if the patient receives the telemedicine services right after on the same day of the confirmation, then they will receive about 2 weeks treatment. So depending on when they apply and are registered in our services, the treatment period will become different. And here you can see the ECRF. So we use this for this study. And in the beginning, there were a lot of free text that the doctors could utilize. So basic information about the patient's vaccination and the medical history, all this information are collected through the ECRF system. And for the COVID-related symptoms, doctors were free to type in these symptoms. And so there was a lot of flexibility, and treatment methods and plans were also typed in as a free text format. And however, then a lot of variances occurred by doctors. In other words, some doctors left a very detailed record, whereas some too simple. So we found that the variability is just too wide to be used for research, and also even for the record purpose, we thought that the consistency is important, and therefore we modified the ECRF and advanced that. And this modified version was applied between the April 4th of the 2022 and April 15th of the same year. Now, what kind of changes are made before and after the modification? So, in the modified version, the doctors are asked to check the 24 COVID-related symptoms as a Likert scale. So, for example, like cold, fatigue, cough, sore throat, dysthymia, the anosmia, ageusia. So during the consultation period, doctors were asked to check these COVID-related symptoms. And also, as for the treatment methods and treatment plan, in the past, the doctors were allowed to put the free text for the treatment methods. But now, this time, they have to click and check the boxes for the treatment plan. And also, they're allowed to put some comments as well. And also, we created some section where doctors can put the prognosis and also follow-up information. And here you can see that modified ECRF screenshot. So on the left-hand side, you can see that this indicates the Likert scale where doctors check for each symptoms. And on the right-hand side, this is the section where they can put the treatment plan, including the urban medicine that they prescribed. And also there is a section that they can still put in some free text. And based on this system, we conducted the study. And here you see the study design. So this is a retrospective chart review study of the positive COVID-19 patients who received the Korean medicine treatment via the telemedicine center of the Korean medicine for COVID patients from the period of the April 4th of 2022 to April 15th. And the subjects are patients who consented to participate in the study among the total COVID patients. And here you see the process. So we got the informed consent from the patient, and we also recorded that. But then people claimed that we still have to do more, so we collected the e-consent from patients. So here you see the process. So among the doctors that participated in the study, we first got consent from Korean medicine doctors to get the treatment information from them. So it was not really the mandatory consent, but we called them and we got this consent. And among the Korean medicine doctors who expressed the consent, and we sent the e-consent format to the patients of these doctors to get the consent. And then we submitted all these consents to the IRB to get the approval for the study. So because this is a retrospective data, if you have these consent formats, then you can actually get waiver from the further investigation or assessment. So we got the approval from the IRB. And then we got the anonymized data sets, and currently the statistical analysis is underway. So if the conference takes place after we completed all the analysis, then we may have been able to show you and present to you the results of our study. But because the analysis is still underway, we are not able to present the results yet. So we can only explain about the process. But here you see some expected outcomes. So what we are trying to analyze is that we would like to analyze characteristics of the subjects who are treated with the KM medicine, and also what kind of progresses that they showed after the KM treatment. And also we want to identify some characteristics of the herbal extract as well as the prescriptions, and what kind of efficacy they have for the COVID treatment. Next, this is the second study. So this was a survey for the after effects of the COVID-19 and the level of satisfaction for Korean medicine treatment. So here you see the study design. And the subjects are the patients who consented to participate in the survey. So after we get the e-consent, the patients can be registered for the study. And this is a prospective study, so we have to get the approval from the IRB before proceeding to the study. And once we get the approval, then we are going to send the online surveys and consent formats to patients to collect the data. And after that, we will conduct the statistical analysis. And as is the situation, so we submitted the first documents to IRB, but then they asked us to make up and improve the document and resubmit that. So currently, we are working on the document. And the expected outcome from this study is that we want to identify the characteristics of the sequel is after the Korean medicine treatment. So what kind of after effects the patients suffer after the Korean medicine treatment, and also we want to assess the level of satisfaction about the Korean medicine treatment among the patients. And this is the future challenge. So while conducting this study, we identify some of the areas for further improvement. So let's say that if we could have used a more advanced ECRF format, then we may have had much more patients who could be registered in the study. Then we may have been able to richer and more fruitful results. So this is something that we regret. And even with this modified ECRF version, still we should make some further improvement. So in the sense, I think that after the study, maybe we can identify more areas for improvement regarding the ECRF modification. And also under this contactless remote treatment, we have to identify what will be the effective ways to get patient consent. So this study actually had a very poor progress in terms of the getting consent from the patient. So I think this is something, again, that we can work on in order to come up with a better design for the next study. We also have to think about how to increase the Korean medicine doctors' participation for this type of study. So regarding the information collection, data collection, we have to get consent from the Korean medicine doctor. And so there are some Korean medicine doctors who are pretty active and strongly support our activities. But in fact, only 80% of the Korean medicine doctors showed the agreement. So in order to further increase the Korean medicine doctors' participation, I think, again, we have to devise some ways. And also, in order to accurately evaluate the effectiveness of the Korean medicine treatment, I think we have to work on methodology as well. Because the COVID-19 patients, sometimes they receive both the Western medicine and Korean medicine treatment, or they receive only Korean medicine or Western medicine treatment only. And therefore, we have to have a sophisticated study design that can make the accurate comparison among the patients with different treatment modalities. And once we have the result about the satisfaction of the Korean medicine treatment, then we again have to work on strategies to further increase the level of satisfaction among patients for Korean medicine treatment. So these are the challenges or the future homeworks that we have to take. And with that, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your information. Once we're done with all presentations, we will open up the floor for a Q&A. Next, I'd like to invite over from next speaker, Professor Kim Yong-ju from Sangji University. Professor is going to talk to us about COVID-19 and the use of traditional medicine, a brief overview of current evidence. Please help me welcome Professor Kim.
Hello everyone, my name is Yong-ju Kim. I'm currently working as an assistant professor at Sangji University. And most of all, it is my privileged honor to be able to have this presentation in front of all of you today. And thank you so much for all your precious time being here today. Yep. And today I'm gonna talk about the existing literature linking traditional medicine and COVID-19. And before we go into the details about the literature, maybe it may be helpful to look at the brief statistics regarding the COVID-19 pandemic currently. So this information is from the WHO COVID-19 dashboard, and it shows that from the inception around the late 2019 up until here, the information is up until May this year, 2022. Globally, more than 500 million individuals had ever been affected with COVID-19, and around which is equivalent to 6 to 7 persons among 100 people around the world were affected with COVID-19 with a case fatality rate of 1.2%. In the Republic of Korea context, among the 100 people, around 35 persons had been affected with COVID-19 with a case fatality rate of 0.13%. In terms of the statistics among the Western countries, in the United States, around 24 to 25 persons among 100 had been affected with COVID-19 with 1.2% of case fatality rate. And the statistics in the UK is similar with the US, such as around 32 cases among 100 people with a case fatality rate of 0.8%. So this figure shows that from the very beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak up until now, the number of weekly new cases has been increasing until particularly around the peak due to the Omicron variant, and then decreasing since then. And then the number of deaths per week due to COVID-19 infection has been decreasing after the peak due to the Omicron variant. So according to the WHO, the number of deaths in the September this year is slightly lower than the number in March 2020, which is around the earlier stage of the pandemic. So now we're gonna look at the existing literature linking traditional medicine and COVID-19. And when looking at the literature, the studies can be classified into generally 3 levels. So at the bottom levels, single studies can include randomized controlled trials or non-randomized trials and observational studies such as cohort studies and case control studies. And then systematic or scoping reviews have been conducted by wrapping up all such single studies. And then recently, several studies look at the quality of the systematic reviews and provide a really big picture framework for wrapping up all such studies. So it may be good to start by looking at what's in the reviews of the systematic reviews. First, Wu and colleagues conducted a review of systematic reviews. And so they searched the literature via databases from the inception through October 2021, looking at for the studies for the systematic reviews linking TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, and COVID-19. So they identified a total of 17 systematic reviews and evaluated the studies by using a measurement tool to assess systematic review version 2, AMSTA2, to evaluate the quality of systematic reviews, and also used the grading of recommendations, assessment, development, and evaluation grade to evaluate the quality of single study. So among the systematic reviews with moderate level quality by the standard using AMSTA2, so the combined treatment, which is TCM with standard care compared to standard care alone, was associated with more favorable, so beneficial outcomes for long recovery, clinical symptoms, clearance rate, and durations. and progression to severe or critical cases, and hospital stay and mortality. And similar results has been found from another review of systematic reviews from Jeong and colleagues from the Korea Institute of Oriental Medicine and Kyung University. So the authors assessed the quality of studies linking complementary and alternative medicine and COVID-19 by looking at the databases from the inception up until October 2021 and identified 24 systematic reviews. So they applied similar methodologic tool to assess the quality of the systematic reviews and evidence, and found that compared to the standard treatment alone, the combined treatment, which is TCM with standard care, was associated with more favorable, so beneficial outcomes for progression to severe or critical cases and symptom resolution, particularly fever and lung recovery as well. Then moving to another level of study, which is a systematic review, Jeong and colleagues, my apologies if my pronunciation is inaccurate. So Jeong and colleagues conducted a systematic review by looking at the efficacy and safety of herbal medicine interventions for COVID-19 treatment, looking at literature from June 2020 through early this year, March 2022. And they identified 25 randomized controlled trials and used Cochrane Collaboration's risk of bias assessment tool with 2, RAV2, and GRADE as well to assess the quality of the evidence. So they conducted a random effect meta-analysis comparing herbal medicine intervention with standard care compared to standard treatment alone, and found that the results were more favorable for the outcomes such as all-cause mortality and exacerbation rate and total effective rate and symptom remissions such as fever and coughing, fatigue, and then lung recovery and hospital stays and time to negative coronavirus test. Also, Lee and colleagues conducted a systematic review focusing on those affected with severe to critical COVID-19, so those who are at the severe or critical phase of the disease. And they searched the database, they searched literature through the database from the inception until March 2022, and identified a total of 21 studies, including around 13,000 several severe or critical COVID-19 cases from 6 RCTs and 15 observational studies. They applied similar approaches to assess the quality of their studies. And then the findings suggest that when comparing combined treatment to usual care alone, beneficial associations were found for outcomes such as mortality rate and conversion rate to critical cases and mechanical ventilation, and length of hospital stay, vital clearance rate, and symptom resolution. And they also found that no serious adverse events reported for those with TCM treatment. So these studies suggest potential beneficial role of TM traditional medicine for the treatment of COVID-19 in various outcome measures across multiple disease phases of COVID-19. Then based on that findings, we may want to ask then specifically what formula is going to be more effective for treating the COVID-19, and there may be any specific factors that's going to be contributing to the efficacy of the TM for COVID-19. with this question in mind, Lee and colleagues conducted a systematic review focusing on a single formula, which is Lian Hua Qingwan. And so the authors identified 7 studies, including 900 participants, so in which Lian Hua Qingwan was used to treat COVID-19. And they found that compared to those who received the usual care alone, individuals who received the treatment for both Linhua Qinwan and standard care were more likely to have a favorable outcomes in the total efficacy rate and risk of adverse events and long recovery and exacerbation rate and the clearance rate of clinical symptoms. Then, in a similar manner, Jeong and colleagues conducted a systematic review focusing on Qingfei Paidu decoction, and they identified 9 trials, including more than 1,000 individuals affected with COVID-19. And they found that compared to those who received standard care alone, individuals who received both Qingfei Paidu decoction and usual care were more likely to have favorable outcomes. For instance, so for the dual treatment group were around 70% less likely to go through the severe phase of disease. So progression rate was 70% less likely compared to the usual care alone. And also, dual treatment group were 13% more likely to be recovered compared to the usual care only group. And also, the risk of adverse event was more than 50% lower among the dual treatment group than the standard care only group. Then there have been some other extended literature looking at another point of view, such as the potential efficacy of acupuncture or the application to long COVID, which is COVID-19 sequelae. So Ren and colleagues conducted a scoping review for looking at the potential efficacy of acupuncture or moxibustion for COVID-19. They found a few systematic or scoping reviews for that matter, and one systematic review by Badash and colleagues. My apologies again if my pronunciation is inaccurate. The authors, their study included 1 retrospective cohort and 1 case series and 1 case report, and found that acupuncture could reduce the negative emotions, improve symptoms such as chest distress and shortness of breath and dull pain in epigastric region, and regain the consciousness. And another review by Chen and colleagues, which included 1 RCT and 1 non-randomized trial and 6 observational studies and 7 case reports, concluded that acupuncture can relieve the symptoms of COVID-19 patients and shorten the length of hospital stay, and may be effective for elderly patients with serious illness. And then in terms of the long COVID, Kim and colleagues from the Kyung conducted a scoping review to identify and summarize the current knowledge and approaches in the use of CAM interventions in the management of long COVID. And in their study, CAM was defined as either traditional medicine or mind-body therapy, homeopathy, and dietary supplements. And their findings show that the existing literature regarding linking the traditional medicine for the COVID-19 sequelae may be limited in terms of the number of studies. So their conclusion was more further investigation is required to understand the potential application in that matter. So in conclusion, in terms of the use of traditional medicine in the treatment of COVID-19, there has been an increasing body of literature showing the efficacy and safety of the treatment. But as we all see from the literature, more robust study design and studies are required. And maybe as the pandemic is going slightly to the late phase, so we may want to take more attention to the potential application in the long COVID as well. Thank you very much for listening, and also I would like to acknowledge that this work is funded by the is part of a research project funded by the Ministry of Health and Welfare and National Institute for Korean Medicine Development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Again, if you have any questions, we will have the Q&A session after all the presentations are over. So following that, let us move on to the next presenter. Kwon Sun-ho, Principal Researcher of the Korean Institute of the Oriental Medicine, will give us a presentation on the Korean medicine R&D for treating emerging infectious disease. Please give him a big hand. Good afternoon. I am Kwon Sun-ho from Kyung. First and foremost, I am very honored to present to you the results of our study. I would like to thank the Ministry of Health and Welfare, the NIKOM, as well as the Association of the Korean Medicine. Thank you very much. Today, I would like to share with you the study project that we conduct in our research institute. So I'll talk about the results of the clinical and preclinical studies. After the declaration of the COVID pandemic, the vaccines and therapeutics have been developed and made some progress. And so now we are able to enter into the phase of the COVID endemic. However, we are not completely out of the COVID tunnel yet. And so as for the prevention, in order to improve the efficacy of the vaccine and minimize the side effect, and also in terms of therapeutics, we have to find out the safe and efficacious treatment method. So these are urgent needs that we have today. So in our institute, regarding the emerging infectious disease, we have worked on developing the Korean medicine for the treatment of the various emerging infectious diseases. And for this, we have conducted the clinical studies. Here you can see some pipelines of the new drugs that we are working on regarding various emerging infectious diseases. So we follow the R&D pipeline for new drug development. And for therapeutic development, the pipeline could be different. So based on the phenotype, we developed a screening methodology. And then we identify the substance candidates. And then we conduct the MOA study for target substances so that we can apply them for clinical trials. So for this, we conduct the preclinical efficacy data. And here you can see the coronavirus and how it is replicated throughout its life cycle. And you can see that the COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus, it binds to the receptor and create the viral replication, and then it goes through the reassembly process. So this is a life cycle. And as for the antiviral drug candidates, various studies have been conducted to identify the effective antiviral drug candidates. And for the drugs that are approved or with the fast track approver, many of them are in the group of the polymerase inhibitor or main protease inhibitor or RNA-dependent polymerase or RDRP inhibitor. There are the two classes of the antiviral drugs that have been approved so far. For the oral drug, here you can see the molnupiravir, and this is a polymerase inhibitor based on the nucleoside, and it could create various mutations in the replication phase to have an antiviral efficacy. And as for the Paxlovid, this is a main protease inhibitor, and it also provides a broad spectrum anti-coronaviral effect. But in order to have a more effective PK, the ritonavir can also be utilized. But it's a CYP3/4 inhibitor, and therefore it can cause drug-drug interactions, and therefore it has some limitations for the clinical application and uses. And among the Chinese medicine, as for the Sanhuanglian, you can see that it consists of the 3 herbs substances, and it has been developed as a preparation. And this has been utilized as a drug for common cold, especially for the anti-fever effect. So this drug has already been available in the Korean market. And among the substances called Baccarlin, this could work as an inhibitor for the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And this is a Linhuantian-1, and this is a capsule-based drug. And according to the results from the in vitro study, as well as the ICTM meta-analysis, the efficacy has been proven. And so this has been approved as a therapeutics for COVID-19 in China. Next, from now on, I'm going to talk about the researches that our research institute has conducted. So this is about the preclinical study. And this study was announced in the November 2019, and it's about the Stephania tetrahedra more. So this is a natural bispendulosquinolene alkaloid tetrahedrine substances, and this is about the SARS-CoV-2 efficacy. So this research was announced before the COVID pandemic. And after the COVID pandemic, this substance was used for the clinical trial in China. And also the follow-up study was conducted. And based on that, the Japan NID as well as the US. So the follow-up studies have been conducted as for the efficacy of the SARS-CoV-2 agent, and its antiretroviral efficacy was proven. Next is about the Sophora flavescens. And Sophora flavescens in the Korean medicine. So they have an anti-inflammatory effect. And it can also work against the viral genomics, and it can inhibit the replication of the virus. So it could impair the virus-induced autophagic flux in human lung cells. So this MOE, or the mechanism of action, was proven through the preclinical study. Next, the coronavirus polymerase inhibitor. So this is a very important target for the COVID drugs. So the remdesivir and the ragavir, which are the approved drugs, they also target the same thing. And so in our research team, we try to develop a cell-based platform for the high-efficient screening for the coronavirus polymerase inhibitors. So we developed our own activity assay system. So from cells extracted from the human bodies, we cultivate the coronavirus polymerase, and from the activity of this polymerase, RNA replication products can be produced, and it quantifies the volume of the RNA replication. Then compared to the remdesivir, the approved drug, IDRP inhibition ratio can be quantified in a more accurate manner using our system. And through the screening system that we developed, we also worked on the coronavirus polymerase inhibitor for the licorice radiator. And we found that compared to remdesivir, this drug is more efficacious. And also it has a more broad-spectrum anti-coronaviral effect. It can also work on the MERS-CoV-2 and SARS-CoV-2 as well. So very broad spectrum anti-infection effect. So compared to remdesivir, the licorice, you can see that it can actually inhibit the amino acid domain. It can create a stronger hydrogen bond against the amino acid domain. And as for the natural cardiotonic steroid, the antiviral effects, various studies have been conducted. But as for the buffer gargarizans cantor, it has a lot of toxic substances. And therefore, in order to utilize the substances from this buffer gargarizan cantor, we wanted to assess whether it is possible to be applied to the clinical practice. So we conducted the toxicology and MOE studies. And here you can see the results. So the cardiotonic steroids extracted from the buffer gargarizans cantor, you can see that they have a broad spectrum antiviral properties, and toxicity levels are all different. So we found out some substances with low toxicity but with high potential for clinical use. And next is about the Dryopteris crassismo. And this is about the anti-coronaviral activity of the natural progluticals and Dryocrassin. And you can see that these two substances do have a broad spectrum anti-coronaviral activity, and especially it inhibits the main protease of the SARS-CoV-2 in a dose-dependent manner. And also in the toxicology study, we found that it has no toxicity. So this is a substance with a high potential for clinical application. Next is about the natural polyphenols extracted from the Punica granatum and Vitis vinifera. And these two substances, both of them again do have a broad anti-coronaviral effect as inhibitors. And its mechanism of action is that it works against the SARS-CoV-2 main protease and RDRP. So inhibit these two. Next is the immunoadjuvant extracted from the Korean medicine substance. So this is a babakin extracted from the Soralia corifolia, and it produces the immunoadjuvant activity by targeting the NFAT signaling pathway, and it can also increase the secretion of the cytokine. And also in an antigen-specific manner, you can see that it increases the antibody release and production. So we proved that through the in vivo study. So here, this shows that this babacin from the Soralia corifolia, it has a high potential to be used as an immunoadjuvant for the COVID treatment. Next, I would like to share with you the clinical trial that we conduct together with the Kyung University Hospital for long COVID patients. For long COVID symptoms, they are very diverse. And also the prevalence rate of the long COVID is pretty high. However, there are no approved therapeutics available yet. And so the KEM can provide an effective alternative for long COVID patients. we believe that the KM does have a high potential. And therefore, we conducted the study on urban medicines for post-acute after effect of the COVID-19. And we conducted the pilot clinical study in order to assess the efficacy of these drugs. So the patients are divided into 3 groups, and for each group, we provided the Korean medicine for 3 months, and then we assessed the progress or changes before and after. And we also conducted the 6-month follow-up study in order to check the effects of the Korean medicine on the immunity against the COVID-19. In this study, it was very difficult to register patients, and so we did a lot of promotion and advertisement, and many people supported us in our study. In particular, the National Medical Academy of Korea really helped us a lot to collect the subject of this study. Next is about the acupuncture and moxibustion treatment and what kind of effects it could have for the sequelae after the COVID-19. So we did the prospective case series study. So the alopecia, fatigue, as well as the ageusia and the arthralgia. So we collected the patients with these diseases, and we did the 4-week study. And after that, we did the follow-up evaluation to prove the efficacy of the KM medicine. And in some cases, it was proven that the KM medicine can be effective for alopecia treatment that are derived from the COVID infection. So using the Korean medicines, we can effectively respond to various emerging infectious diseases. So incubation, and there are different phases in the disease cycle. So incubation, symptomatic infection, hyperinflammation, and resolution. And these infectious diseases tend to progress very fast with a lot of profiles. And therefore, we have to have effective treatment for each phase of the disease cycle, including the prevention, mild phase, severe phase, and rehabilitation phase. And once we have the diverse treatment options available, then we'll be able to choose the right treatment for each phase. And in that sense, I believe Korean medicine has a lot to play. And in WHO, for the use of the traditional medicine, they have provided very strong support. And this is the report that shows the WHO strongly supports the scientifically proven traditional medicine because traditional medicine has a lot of advantages as well as the timeless values and long history. However, the efficacy and safety should be tested and thoroughly assessed. And so for the traditional medicine with proven efficacy and safety, the WHO mentioned that they strongly encourage the use of that, and so this indicates that the further researches and developments are needed in order to promote the use of traditional medicine. So this will bring me to an end of the presentation, but I sincerely hope that the results of our clinical studies that are sponsored and supported by the various organizations in Korea could build some foundation for establishing scientific evidence so that the KM practices can be promoted further. And with that, thank you very much for your attention.
So far, we've heard a keynote address from Director Jeong Heejae and heard from 5 speakers' presentations. After a 20-minute break, we are going to, after 30-minute break, we're going to resume with our final session. And please remember that our website, ICTM 2022, can be accessed for presentation slides after the conference. we will continue to promote Korean medicine going forward. Thank you for your time.